Hi again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Around the Town with Chuck. My name is Chuck Guglielmo. It's a weekly interview show where we talk with interesting people. And today I'm happy to have from the Conneaut School Board a very interesting person, Diana DiPofi. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, Chuck, it's my absolute honor to be here with you today.
Good.
And I'm also happy to know that I'm an interesting person in Conneaut.
You are an interesting person.
That's good to know.
The main reason is you're on the school board member.
Right.
And that's a lot of the reason. So Diana, let's start with, you've always been in the education field.
Absolutely.
So why don't you give us a little preview of yourself and your education field leading up to your current position?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Conneaut, Ohio, and I went to many schools within Conneaut. I started at West Main, and then I went to Amboy. Then I went to Chestnut, Rao Junior High School, and then Conneaut High School. I graduated in 1992. From there, I decided I wanted to go to Ohio University, mostly because I wanted to be in the band. Because I was
Great band.
It's an awesome band, and I love it. But I knew that the whole time I was in school, I wanted to go to college. And there were only really three professions that I knew of that you needed a college degree for: a doctor, a lawyer, and a teacher. And did not want to be a doctor or a lawyer, and there were so many good role models and many people that I connected with in the field of education. I thought what an honor it would be to become a teacher. So I went to Ohio University and I started studying elementary education. I did my student teaching in Sydney, Australia, so I got a chance to go abroad, which was amazing. It was fantastic. I tell everybody that I come in contact with, do that before you get married and have kids. It's a perfect time for you to be able to go and see other places and really just emerge into the culture. So I got to see a whole different educational system, which was very interesting. Then I came back to the United States, but I did not come back to Conneaut right away. I actually lived in Athens, and I took a position with Ohio University. So I worked for Ohio University for 3 years. Then when my father passed away, I wanted to be back closer with my family. So I moved back to Conneaut, and I took a position in Summit County, so I drove every day. And then a job opened up in the Conneaut school systems, and I taught 6th grade. So I taught 6th grade. I was the 3rd grade reading coach when we had Reading First. And then most of where I worked was in the middle school. I taught 7th and 8th grade. And then later on in my career, I was an administrator with the district for 4 years.
What a great history you've had. I didn't realize that. And you mentioned your dad, Dave, of course.
Yes, my father,
and, he was in the limelight, too. He was a city council person, if I remember correctly, right?
Yep. So my dad was elected to city council when I was in high school, which was really cool. And I think now that we're in the throes of election season with my own kids. And my daughter's a junior at Conneaut High School, and my son's in 7th grade at Conneaut Middle School. So it's kind of nice, to talk about, what's an election like? How do you run an election? And it reminds me of when my dad was going through it, and we used to go door to door, and we would talk to people. And so it was kind of neat. I was right in the middle of it with him. And then clearly you cannot be on the school board if you're employed by the school system. So in 2013, I took a position with an ed tech company, and I decided I want to be able to, it was kind of odd to not be a part of the schools. So I decided I wanted to run for the school board, and I did in 2013, and I was elected, and I started my term in 2014. But it was neat. It was kind of like a reminder of that public service. You're definitely on the school board. Our job really is, we're the steward of taxpayer dollars, and our job is to implement policy. So it's kind of a completely different aspect of education from anything that I had ever done. But certainly my foundation of being a teacher and being an administrator and being an educator really helped me understand what my role was on the school board. And it's nice because when we talk about things with each other and with the superintendent, I can draw back on those experiences.
We're going to talk a lot about you being on the school board, but let's go back to when you became a teacher for the first year. You said 6th grade.
Yes, in Conneaut, my first was 6th.
In Conneaut was 6th grade. Is it what you thought it would be when you first started?
So my very first job was preschool, and I always knew I wanted to teach younger kids. So to teach preschool was really great because I really like younger kids, and in kindergarten, that age group. So when I wanted to come back to Conneaut and the job that was offered to me was 6th grade, I was a little nervous. Like I was a little like, oh no, like these kids are old and so it was weird. But then the thing that was the best about it was even though, I walked into the classroom and they're like, here's all the desks and here's the books that you're going to use. I worked with such wonderful people. The team of teachers that I got a chance to work with, like Linda Wires, she was my 4th grade teacher. Now we were colleagues. So several of the teachers that I had myself were now my colleagues. And it was kind of neat. Like it was, like I got to see them in a completely different light. Like they're like real normal people. When you're a kid and you're looking at them, you just stand in awe of the teachers that you have. So it was kind of neat, like to go back and work side by side with many of the people that I had myself. It's amazing. And the staff of our schools, I can't speak highly enough about them. They're just an amazing group of people.
That's great to hear. The middle school age children, of course I have them on Sunday, but I only have them for an hour and a half.
I live with one.
Are they the biggest challenge, would you say, going from elementary to middle school, then high school, they're kind of like in a transition period? Would you call that a big challenge?
I would say that the difference is when you're in an elementary school, you're still kind of a rock star. Like, you're kind of like their mom. You're just kind of like anything.
That's a good way to put that.
Anything that you say is kind of like they're just going to take that as gospel because I'm the teacher, I'm taller than you, I'm older than you, they think I'm smarter than you. So it's kind of like that kind of a situation. When you get into middle school, and I know this because I live with a middle schooler and plus I was around him a lot, there's a little more, I'm going to challenge you a little bit. Like I'm going to push the envelope, I'm going to say, why is it like that? When you're teaching and you're explaining, they're not going to just blindly agree with everything you say. So in a way, it's nice because you do have that banter back and forth. And the students that I had were just wonderful. I mean, in our city, we're very fortunate to have a really nice group of kids that come into our schools every day. Then I think when you're in high school, you get a little more of the, I know this, I've got this. And then sometimes you just have to let kids go out and be responsible and do what they feel is the right thing. And then you have to be there to pick them up when they fall. Like, I got it, I know what's happening on that algebra test, and then you get a D. Then as a teacher, you have to go, okay, we need to work on this because you really didn't know. So I think that would be the difference in like the ages of kids that come into our schools.
Let's talk about the school board now.
Sure.
How many are on the school board and who are they?
Okay, we have 5 members on the school board. Joni Norton is the president, I'm the vice president, and then we have 3 members, Suzanne Bernardini, Mike Kennedy, and Chris Newcomb.
Okay, that seems like a good group. Now, are you guys all in your second go-around, or is there somebody in the first term?
Okay, so I'm in my first term.
First term.
Right. And Suzanne, Joni, and Chris were all 3 re-elected for their second term. And then Mike, I think, is probably in his 4th term.
Okay, and how long is a term?
A term is 4 years.
4 years. Okay, what is the goals and objectives for school board members?
Okay, so a school board member, we work as a team. But that does not mean that everybody on the team has to agree, but everybody on the team has a voice. And the voice that we bring forward is the voice of our constituents. So we really act as the liaison between school and community. Now, as that liaison, the decisions we make have to be financially sound, but they also have to coincide with board policy. School board members should not get involved with personnel issues other than hiring and firing the superintendent and the treasurer. So that's really the goal of the board. There's a couple little caveats to that. So in a board meeting, the president runs the meeting, and then we all get 1 vote.
And that rotates?
It does rotate. It
has to rotate, or you guys just rotate it?
It does not have to rotate, and we don't have to rotate in order. So like I'm the vice president, I don't necessarily get to be the president. So what happens is we have an organizational meeting in January, and we decide who do we want to be our president, and then who do we want to be our vice president. Now the people on the school board that we have now work well together, and it has been on a rotating basis. But like Chris Newcomb was the president 2 years in a row. So it just kind of depends where we're at, who we think should be the leader. That's just kind of the way that works.
And school board meets once a month?
We do. We meet once a month, and that meeting is a public meeting and it's open. We have a work session ahead of time, but then we also can meet periodically if we need to. For example, we're meeting on Wednesday this week because the snow removal bids did not come in before our last meeting, so we had to redo it. So we're going to have to meet to vote on that. But normally, it's once a month.
Do you get a good response from the public coming to the meetings?
We really don't. I think there's a couple reasons for that. The first is we don't really have controversy, which tells me that our school is run by a very capable set of individuals. So we don't really have, you would imagine like if you had people coming in, it would be because they were complaining about something. Most people don't come in just to see how great everything's going. That's
kind of
just
like city council.
It's just the nature of the way we are as human beings. If everything's good, everything's good. So that tells me we have a really good group of people running our schools. We do have a student of the month that comes, so their family comes. If we have special presentations, they come. But the other thing too is they're videotaped. So I think people, if they were interested in watching it, they could always watch it on tape.
I see.
On our website, so you can go to our website and watch it.
The student of the month, is that from every building?
No, so the student of the month that comes, it's hosted by Rotary, and it's a 5th grade student. So we have 6 5th grade classrooms. 1 child from each classroom is picked in 6 consecutive months.
One thing I have to say is 2 excellent choices in our last 2 superintendents. Michael Notar was an excellent hire. I mean, he was all about kids from kindergarten through senior.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And Lori Riley is another outstanding superintendent. To me, she seems to be all about being out in the community. 2 excellent hires by the school board.
I think that when you say that there are 2 excellent hires, I think that has a couple contributing factors. As a board, we want what's best for kids, and I do believe both Michael Notar and Lori Riley are what's best for kids. Superintendents are in a very lonely position. They have to make a lot of decisions, and 50% of the people like it and 50% don't. They were both very good at being able to justify their decisions and explain them to the staff. Very legitimate. They're both 2 wonderful people.
How hard was it to accept Notar's resignation?
Personally, for me, it was very difficult. There was a lot of factors involved with it that were very personal for him. And I have to just say, in every aspect of everybody's life, you have to do what's best for you. And I feel like the job that he's in now is really what's best for him. And I wish him well in every endeavor. I really do.
Great man.
He was wonderful.
Great man. And so is Lori.
Yes.
Lori's outstanding. And how did that hire come about in a rather short time?
Okay, so in the state of Ohio, anybody can get out of their contract by July 10th without penalty. So when Michael resigned, it was very close to that July 10th deadline. So we knew that we had to select somebody and give their board time to replace them, because if it was after July 10th, then their board doesn't have to release them because it's hard to find people. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't put somebody else in an awkward position. So Michael had resigned, we posted the job, we started the interviews, and we enlisted the help of John Rubisich at the Educational Service Center. Now we kind of got in on a good time frame because Buckeye had just hired, and they went through the process with the ESC, but also Ashtabula had just done the same. So sitting in those interviews were a panel of people that we could talk to. They were board members, and again, Mr. Rubisich from the ESC, so it was easy for us to say who's a good fit for us, because John Rubisich was also in on the interviews when we hired Michael 2 years previously. So we were kind of fresh in the whole, we just hired somebody, it was all 5 of us, we were all on the board when we hired Michael, and then to turn around and to be able to get somebody, we kind of just drew on what happened at Buckeye and what happened in Ashtabula, and we enlisted the ESC. So for us, it was really, when it came down to who did we want to interview and then who did we want to hire, Lori stood heads and shoulders above.
Oh, she's fantastic.
She is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic.
And she came to us as an assistant superintendent. So she had that experience, but she hadn't run the show. So that was kind of like the best of both worlds. Like now she was going to get the opportunity to be the in-charge person.
That's exactly how she put it when we had her on the air too.
Oh yeah.
Exactly the same words.
She was the workhorse and now she's the show horse. Yeah. She's fantastic.
Yeah, she is.
And she was really good and very smart about building a team. So she has her administrative team and she just includes every single person in her decisions. She meets with them frequently. And as much as she's in charge and their leader, she is very much we're going to work beside it and we're going to have professional development and we're all going to get better together. So it's just she's a very good mix.
As a school board, do you guys ever on occasion meet with other area school boards to go over things or discuss anything?
Okay, so we have 2 times a year. The first one actually is at the beginning of the year in January. So all of the county schools, so the 7 school districts in the Asheville County, we meet together for a professional development night, and we have dinner together. Last year we did it at Jefferson High School. The ESC runs it. We usually have a speaker come in. Last year's speaker was from the Ohio School Board Association, OSBA, which we are all members of. So then we have something topical, whatever it is that we're all going through, then we get to all meet and discuss it together as a large group. Last year we talked heavily about data in the report card because everything changed. And we were all kind of stuck in this, what are we gonna do? What's this look like? Explain what this means. And then the second time is actually next week. The Ohio School Board Association hosts in Columbus a conference. And that conference is for every school board member in the state of Ohio, all superintendents and all treasurers. At that time, we get to select one delegate from our board who goes and they represent us by voting. And we vote on all sorts of different things that are pertinent to what's happening in the state of education.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Having been a teacher, Diana, do you consider that an added value now that you're on the school board? Is that something you would recommend as if someone's interested in becoming a school board member? Does being a teacher help, or doesn't it?
It's kind of a double-edged sword. So it does help in a way that I understand what we're talking about. It makes the conversations easy when we talk about what does test scores mean? What does this mean? What's difficult sometimes can be that I used to work with everybody that still works here. So there's definitely a point of there needs to be a separation. Like when you come and tell me something, there's nothing I can do about that. That's not an issue that I can help you with. That becomes difficult when you're talking about, people I taught with for 5 years or 10 years, or because there's things that it's just, that's not really a me decision. That's something you have to go to the superintendent with, or that's something. So that can be a little tricky at times. But really to be a school board member, you have to be able to communicate with the people that you're on the board with. And if
That's
you looked
probably
at
a big one, right?
Well, if you look at the 5 of us, we are 5 different people from 5 different backgrounds, completely different backgrounds. So at times it's one of those, like I'll go into a meeting and go, I know exactly what I think on this topic, but then another board member will say, well, you need to look at it from this side. Whereas I think if we were all the same, if we all were teachers or we all were attorneys, we would all come at it the same way. Because I'm only 1 of 5 votes. I'm 20%. There's nothing I can do on the school board by myself. So it's kind of like one of those, you have to kind of sit back, you have to be the person that can go, I'm going to listen to what you say, you have to validate it, and you have to be open and willing to discuss. And there's really, when you look at our school board, a lot of the discussion and things that we have happen in work session, and during the meetings we'll talk about it, but very rarely is there a vote that's not 5-0. Because in our hearts, everybody wants to do what's best for kids. So our main goal is what is best for children.
Do board members go into the school buildings at all?
Yeah, we do. So clearly myself and Chris Newcomb are the only 2 who have children who attend the schools. So my son is at the middle school, my daughter's at the high school. So we're in and out of those buildings for our own things with our kids. And Chris's daughter attends at Lakeshore. But yeah, we're invited to everything. Anything that's open to the public we can go to. Every year we have a building tour. So we go in, we spend 1 whole morning. Last year we got to eat in the cafeteria at the middle school, which is neat. We got to have school lunch. But we go in and then we have a tour. So we get to go, and it's a guided tour where it's either the principal or sometimes I'll have students do it, where we go in and we can see what's happening in classrooms and we can talk to teachers and things like that. What we're doing this year is each month we're having one principal come in and talk to us about what they're doing specifically in their school.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so the first one was the middle school, last month was Gateway, and then this month we're having the high school come in.
That's wonderful.
It's awesome.
So
it's
that's
fantastic.
something new.
Right, it is.
I don't know if this is a fair question or not, so if you don't want to
I'll
answer,
tell you if
don't
it's fair or
answer.
not.
The administrative shuffle that took place
Sure.
this year, how's that working out?
I think that they love it. Now, nobody likes change. It's very hard as adults to change. When Michael looked at our scores, and we had a really hard conversation with the administrators of, if we don't do something, the state's going to come in and force us. So Michael's presentation to the board was either we change it now or it's going to have to be done. He worked closely with all the principals, and he really felt like where he placed them was in the best interest of kids and adults. And then when he presented it to the board, it was a 5-0 vote. So I think at first they were all a little...
Right off the bat.
Right off the
5-0
bat.
vote.
Yes, there was nobody who held back on it. As a board, the superintendent makes recommendations to us. His recommendation was to shuffle the principals, and we all voted yes. He had very valid reasons, and I think now that we're into the school year, we're down the road a little bit, they are like the happiest. Dawn Zappatelli came in last month and she was glowing. She keeps saying that she's back in her bubble.
Doesn't surprise me because she was there before. Vice principal,
Correct.
maybe?
She was with Jim Lutz, yes.
Yeah, great lady. And,
Right.
and Wendy, I know we had her on the show. She was
Yes,
excited
yeah.
about her new assignment too. So that's great.
Right.
Great. What would you say are some of the major strengths you see in our Conneaut School District?
Staff, absolutely number one. The fact that,
And you mean that from K through 12?
I mean that from pre-K through 12.
Okay.
I truly, truly do. I've worked with many other people. I've worked in every school building, and we're all there for kids. From the top down, everybody is there for kids. If you drive by Lakeshore at 6 o'clock at night, there are still teachers' cars parked out there. I mean, everybody lives it and breathes it.
Dedication, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When my kids used to play sports at CLYO, I'd look over in the stands, and their teachers would be sitting there. Their kids weren't on the field. Our kids are on the field. They were coming to watch our kids. There's a vested interest in our community. Our staff is vested in the whole child, not just when they have them from 7 o'clock till 3 o'clock.
Sure.
So, I mean, and I can speak on personal experiences with my own kids. My kids are very connected with multiple faculty members that they come in contact with every day. You know, my kids will come home and say, I talked to this person, or I talked to this person, or, hey, did you know so-and-so was, but they're having conversations with not even really their classroom teachers in their building. So I think there's just that connection.
That's a great strength then for
Yeah.
the school district.
Everyone is vested. We're vested.
Any other major strengths that you see with the Conneaut schools?
So besides our staff and our students, whom I think are fantastic, we're in an awkward situation right now, as is the state of Ohio with education. We're in a situation where we're testing kids frequently, and you can throw up your hands and say, we're not really going to buy into that. We don't think it's what's best for kids. We didn't get good scores. Our report card does not reflect the work that's being put into kids. So you got to kind of take a step back, which is what we did. You got to pick yourself up, and you got to say, what are we going to do? The best resource in any classroom is a teacher, by far. So we need to put into our teachers professional development. What do you need? Do you need time to plan? We're putting that investment into our teachers because they're all saying, we need to pick it up. We need to do more for kids. So I think the whole, we're in this together and we need to do this, is really going to, it goes miles above anything that's happening, is the fact that everyone gets it. We're moving forward. We're doing better. we're all in.
It's almost
They're all
what
in.
Michael and both Lori said on Around the Town with Chuck, with the test scores and stuff, that it really starts in the K through 2 building, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. And now
People
there's an
don't
indicator
realize
for that.
but why does it start there, in your opinion?
So it's interesting with younger children. So when you look at 2 seventh graders, they're pretty much the same. But when you look at 2 kindergartners, you might have a kindergartner who comes in who can read some words, and then you might have one that doesn't even know how to open a book, doesn't know the top from the bottom, doesn't know where to start. So think about what that looks like and how hard that is in K3. What I know about education and research says to us that the earlier you can intervene with a child, the better their trajectory is for learning. And really that comes before 3rd grade. So if we can identify issues and problems with students prior to grade 3, we can remediate that and we can fix that, then their trajectory for learning is much greater, much greater. So that building is absolutely critical. That's why we have now Head Start in our building. We want to bring it in. We want as many kids in with us as we can. So last year we serviced, I think, 40 preschoolers. This year we have 65. The more we can do in our buildings with younger kids, the better off we're going to be as a school district. So it's best for kids.
Mm-hmm. Open enrollment, are you a fan of that?
I'm actually okay with open enrollment, and I'll tell you why. Families don't look like they did in 1950. People work, moms and dads work. Sometimes the idea of a child living part-time in Conneaut and part-time in Kingsville, it might be easier for the family to let that child go to Buckeye. That's a family decision. We live in a free country where there's choices about everything. You can choose to send your child to Catholic school. You can choose to send your child to a private school. You should be able to choose what's best for your family when it comes to public education as well. We are not as affected by open enrollment as schools like Ashtabula because Geneva is right there. So it doesn't affect us as much, but I would say that we probably have as many kids open enrolled in as we have it open
So you
enrolled
like
out.
open enrollment for educational reasons. What about for sports reasons?
Okay, so for educational reasons, I'm fine with it. For sports reasons, there's actually rules and laws against going to a different school.
Oh, okay, did not know that.
Yes.
Kind of explain that to
Sure.
us.
So I'm going to explain it the way I know it, and if there's any corrections, Joel Taylor, you should have him on the show.
He was on the show.
Okay, so
We'll get him back.
OHSAA, which is Ohio High School Athletic Association, they basically tell you all the rules that there are for high school and junior high sports, so grades 7 through 12. They rule that. So if you are open enrolled to another school, you have to do that by August 1st, or you have to sit out a season.
Oh, okay.
So there's rules. So you can't just go, oh, he's a really good football player, we want him to play in Conneaut, and then pick him up on August
gotcha.
29th. You can't do that.
Right.
Then
Well,
you
that team's really good, so I'm gonna go there
Yeah,
next year.
and you
I
can only
gotcha.
do it one time. So like, let's say, like my son goes to Conneaut, let's say I open enroll him to Buckeye, and he plays football there, and then I bring him back, you can't. You can only do it one time. It's to avoid that exact
Yeah.
thing right there.
So that's
Unless you move. I mean, unless you
pretty
move.
got a
that's
handle
something.
on it though.
Yeah, and I mean, Joel is the expert in it. So, I mean, he'd be able to absolutely tell you what it is. But OHSAA has really cracked down on those kinds of things.
Good, good.
It's just not what's best for kids. We don't
Right.
want that happening.
Right. My next question, Diane, I know the answer is going to be test scores, but
Okay.
I want you to think of another answer. Okay.
Mhm.
What do you think is the #1 challenge facing Conneaut schools today?
Poverty. Absolutely, without a doubt. I'm gonna go right back to it. It's about kids. We live in a city where poverty
That's a great answer.
is large.
An unfortunate answer, but a great answer.
Absolutely. And I think while test scores looms in the back of my mind, poverty looms in the front. I grew up, thankfully, with 2 wonderful parents. We lived within poverty, but education was important to my mom and dad, and putting food on the table was important to my mom and dad, and having clean clothes. We didn't have the best. We were fine. Whereas now I think the discrepancy has become so large, and we have so many students who live in poverty that they'll come into school in the morning and eat breakfast, and then they eat lunch, and they're not eating again until they come back the next day.
Sad.
It is sad. So we have a program, Hunger in Our Schools, and we're going to be pairing up with the Conneaut Food Pantry because we want to really make sure that those kids are taking home food for their families. So we're not in a situation where kids aren't eating or families are struggling. But poverty is the absolute number one problem that we have facing our students today.
Yeah, that's a great answer, but like I say, a sad answer.
It's an absolutely sad answer. I wish I could fix it. I wish there was test scores. We can work on that. We absolutely can. We've got the plan for that one. I don't know what the plan is for poverty. And that's what makes it such a large problem. There's no real plan.
How about school safety in Conneaut? How safe are our schools?
So when you go into our schools, you have to buzz in. So you can't just walk in. I don't know if you've driven by the schools, but there's a number on every window now. So everyone's trained with Alice, which is our alerting system if there's anything that happens in our schools, like an active shooter or anything like that. The teachers know what to do, the staff knows what to do, the kids know what to do. We practice lockdowns. It's kind of like one of those things where, every month by law you have to practice fire drills. There hasn't been a deadly fire in a school since the early 50s. But there have been shootings. I mean, it's the reality we face. So you have to be prepared for that. It could happen at a movie theater. I mean, we live in a society where there's just no guarantees. You just have to be prepared. And our staff is prepared if something were to happen. Now, if it's somebody who comes in, when you stop in the office, you have to give them your driver's license now. They scan your driver's license, you're put into the system. So, and I work for an ed tech company, and I go to schools across the northern 42 states. So when I walk into schools, everyone handles it much differently. I've been asked to leave my driver's license and my keys at the front desk. So when I get there, I give them my car keys and my driver's license. Then when I leave, I pick them back up again. So there's lots of different ways to safeguard. Luckily, we've not had to deal with it, and I hope we never do, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Dan, let me close with this. You've been such a great guest. I want to go back to something that you said earlier.
Sure.
That's one of the functions of the school board is to hire and to fire. Now, when you say hire and fire, is that like superintendents and coaches, I would assume? Is that staff, or is it?
No.
What is hire and fire? Like who?
Okay,
Who
so the
talking
school
about?
board only functions as an employing agent to the treasurer and the superintendent only. So we only are responsible for anything that deals with the treasurer and the superintendent. That's it. We can hire a superintendent and a treasurer, and we can fire a superintendent and a treasurer. We evaluate those two employees, and those are the only ones. For example, with the administrative change, all of those things happen on a recommendation from the superintendent. The superintendent is responsible for recommending employment, which if you ever watch a school board meeting, every month there's a recommendation where who are we going to employ. It's paraprofessionals, teachers, anybody who comes in contact with our kids, it has to come through a recommendation from our superintendent. That includes retirements, resignations, all of that. So the board only gets to vote on those. We do not get to recommend. Now, certainly, if there was a case where we felt like an employee was a danger to our students, there would be a discussion, and then certainly any one of the board members could vote no. And if 3 people voted no, then it would not carry, and that person would not get hired. But interviewing or hiring or offering contracts, that is not the responsibility of a school board.
You're so great, I am going to ask you another question.
Sure.
As a school board member, you're a representative of the school system, but you're also a representative of the community.
Okay.
Tell us the difference between the two.
Okay. As a school board member, I'm actually a representative of the community. I'm an elected official in Conneaut, and I service all of the families in the entire city, which is different from city council because they might only be representing the citizens of a ward. So you kind of look at all 5 of us as at-large board members. So we're actually, while we function as a governing board over what happens in the school, we actually are public servants to our community members. So we're the liaison to the school. So legitimately, like let's say you did have an issue with a coach or a teacher that was hired. You as a community member can come to a board member and say, I have a problem with this person. That's totally fine. But a teacher who has a problem with another teacher cannot come to a school board member.
I see.
We are
Okay.
we are not employed by the school system. So if a teacher has a problem with another teacher or an administrator has a problem, they have to go to their supervisor, which is the superintendent.
Gotcha. What about a teacher-parent conflict?
That is principal.
That's principal.
Yep. So there's
Okay.
kind of a little chain of command. So if you are a parent and you have a problem with the teacher, for example, if you called me and said, I am having this problem with my daughter's teacher, the first thing I would say to you is you need to talk to the teacher. And then the second thing I would say is, and when you're done talking to the teacher, if you didn't get the results you wanted, you need to go to the principal. It's just nothing that we can really handle. Now, if it was a bigger issue, like if there was a safety concern or, I saw this, then I would go to the superintendent. It's actually against board policy for board members to do business with administrators and teachers and things like that. We can listen, we can't really do anything. Our advice is always, you need to go to the superintendent, because that's the job of the superintendent. The superintendent runs the daily functioning of all 4 of the buildings in our district.
Well, Diana, you've been great. Continue
Thanks.
doing good work.
Thank you.
I know you will. Diana DiPofi, Conneaut Area School Board member. My guest today on Around the Town with Chuck. Next week we'll have Conneaut football coach Rocco Dobrin with us, giving us a review of his good football season. Have a good night.